My parents threw me out in a blizzard at 15, then claimed credit when I succeeded Reddit stories. After years of cruelty disguised as discipline, they erased me completely. When success made me useful again, they suddenly wanted their version of the story back. Hi, I'm Xavier, 30, and my life officially detonated the day my parents, yes, the same people who once threw me into a freezing Christmas storm for an F, suddenly decided they were proud of me. Proud of me. The son they treated like a defective appliance for 15 years. And before you ask, no, they didn't grow a conscience. They grew an agenda. But we're not starting at the reunion. We're rewinding to the night everything cracked open, because that moment, the moment my mother looked me dead in the eyes at 15 and said, "I should have aborted you," wasn't a climax. It was an opening act. A prelude. A warning shot from a war I didn't even know I'd been drafted into. People look at me now, owner of a sales operations company, stable, sane-ish, functioning adult, and assume I was raised by wise, intelligent, emotionally regulated caretakers. You know, the type who pack lunches with handwritten notes, and teach you life lessons during family game night. No. Absolutely not. My parents weren't guardians. They were directors. And Hazel, my older sister, was the star of their show. Straight A prodigy, violin princess, future doctor carved out of academic marble. There were entire photo albums dedicated to her achievements. You'd think she cured cancer twice before hitting puberty. Me? I was the smudge in the corner of the frame they kept trying to crop out. And the house, oh, the house. To the outside world, it was perfection. Perfect shutters, perfect flower boxes, perfect parents waving politely at neighbors like they were auditioning for a televised Christmas special. Inside? It was a pressure cooker with lace curtains. Bathroom schedules taped to the hallway. Study hours timed to the second. Emotional whiplash served daily. Arthur, my dad, walked around like he invented discipline. Didn't matter if he was reviewing dental charts at work or my math homework at home, he used the same damn expression. A kind of bored disappointment, like he'd been expecting me to fail and was annoyed to be proven right again. Elizabeth, my mother, was the queen of controlled cruelty. Sweet voice in public, razor-edged silence in private. At school, parents adored her. At home, she ran the place like a dictator who watched too many self-help videos and misunderstood all of them. Hazel got violin lessons because it looked good on holiday cards. I got nothing because, as Elizabeth once said, "There's nothing we can showcase from you." They didn't celebrate birthdays without photo ops. Didn't decorate for Christmas unless there was a family newsletter to send out. And if you dared to look tired, you weren't exhausted, you were undisciplined. Laziness, in their worldview, was a moral failure on par with arson. Every day felt like training for a job I wasn't qualified for and didn't want. And every day I felt just short enough to remind them I wasn't Hazel. Hazel, who also got crushed under the weight of their expectations, just quietly enough that no adult ever noticed. But here's the thing they never understood: if you tighten the leash too much, eventually something snaps. Sometimes it's the leash. Sometimes it's the kid. And the night they cornered me over that F, the night the insults turned to blows, the night I stumbled out the front door into sub-zero wind at 15 years old, that wasn't the moment they lost me. That was the moment I realized they'd never had me at all. And it was the moment that eventually, years later, made it very, very fun when they came crawling back. I always thought the breaking point would be some dramatic showdown, maybe a slammed door or a table flipped in slow motion. But the truth is rarely cinematic. It's quieter. It creeps. It corrodes. By the time I hit middle school, I wasn't a kid living in a house. I was a project being managed. A faulty one. Elizabeth appointed herself my personal instructor, though instructor implies guidance, and what she did was more like academic waterboarding. She printed worksheets meant for kids 2 grade levels ahead, then sat across from me with this frozen smile that said, "Let's see how you failed today." If I hesitated, she leaned in like a prosecutor smelling blood. If I got something wrong, she circled it in red, Not once, not twice, but 3 deliberate loops, like she was drawing a target on my incompetence. Read it out loud, she'd say. Slowly. So you can hear how careless you sound. Meanwhile, Arthur added his own brand of quiet psychological erosion. After dinner, he'd hold what he called inspections. He'd flick through my notebooks, page by page, searching for sins, uneven margins, sloppy letters, an eraser smudge. Each flaw got a tap of his pencil. That tapping still lives in a corner of my brain like a smoke alarm with no off switch. If he found too many imperfections, he gave me revisions. Not worksheets, rewrites. Whole chapters. Entire notebooks. Hours of copying material until my fingers cramped. He said it reflected the discipline of my mind. What it actually reflected was a man who confused parenting with project management. Funny thing? Hazel, the golden child, didn't have it easy either. Sure, they praised her in public, but behind closed doors? She walked on the thinnest ice imaginable. One time she brought home an A instead of an A+. Elizabeth, sweet, beloved Mrs. Morgan, slapped her hard enough to echo. I watched from the stairs, holding my breath like a fugitive. Hazel apologized while shaking. Elizabeth tore the paper in half, hissing about relatives noticing. If an A- made her a disappointment, imagine what I was. By 8th grade, something inside me just shut down. Not a decision. More like my brain flipping a breaker. I stopped listening in class. Started doodling cartoons in my notebooks. Tiny moments of rebellion that felt like oxygen. Until, of course, my math teacher confiscated one and called home. Elizabeth arrived at school like she'd been shot out of a cannon. Burst through the classroom door. Yanked me by the arm. Dragged me outside while my classmates stared like they were watching a hostage situation unfold. Do you enjoy embarrassing me? She snapped. I opened my mouth and she snapped again, shut up. You haven't earned the right to speak right now. It wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was Arthur's new rule that night: no doors. Not even for the bathroom at first. My bedroom stayed open forever. Because privacy, apparently, was a privilege for students who brought honor to the Morgan name. Hazel cried when they took the door. Thumbed the frame like she was touching a gravestone. They canceled my birthday next. Decided failures didn't deserve celebrations. I spent the day rewriting worksheets while Hazel sat in her room, quiet as a trapped bird. But the real signal that things were about to implode came in whispers. One night, lying in bed with my eyes closed to avoid attention, I heard them in the hallway. Arthur's voice low, annoyed. He's slipping further, he said. If this continues, he's going to ruin everything we built. Elizabeth answered, we can't let him. Hazel is too important. Not Hazel needs support. Not Xavier is struggling. Hazel is too important. I realized then I wasn't even a person in their story. I was a threat. A liability. And liabilities get removed. The crack didn't just widen after that. It waited. It watched. And it struck in December, because of course it did, during the coldest week of the year. I didn't know it yet, but the night that storm rolled in was the night everything was going to break wide open. December cold doesn't hit like regular cold. It bites. It gets into the spaces between your ribs, crawls down your spine, and settles there like it's unpacking luggage. Our house, of course, had no decorations, just Elizabeth's disapproval hanging like tinsel. Hazel was buried in flashcards, trembling from the pressure she'd perfected over a lifetime. And me? I was pretending to study, knowing damn well the storm wasn't outside yet. It was brewing in the hallway. The phone rang. I didn't think much of it until I heard Elizabeth's voice morph into that brittle tone she reserved for failures and insolence. Yes, this is his mother. I see an F. I swear the air went still. I sat frozen on my bed as she called Arthur, and within minutes he was home, early, still wearing his clinic coat like he was about to diagnose me with chronic disappointment. Sit, he said when I reached the dining room. He didn't shout. Arthur didn't need volume. He weaponized silence. The school counselor had apparently expressed concern. Recommended a supportive environment. Supportive, Elizabeth repeated like it was a slur. They think we're the problem. Then began what they called a correction session. 6 straight hours of yelling, worksheets, drills, more yelling. No food. No water. No breaks. Their disappointment had stamina. By hour 5, my head hurt so badly I couldn't see straight. I blinked too slowly, and Elizabeth's fuse finally ignited. Oh, don't start with tears, she snapped. Tears won't fix your stupidity. I tried to speak. I don't even know what I meant to say, but she was shaking now, trembling with a rage that felt personal. Like I had insulted her existence by being alive. You've done nothing but ruin everything we worked for. I should have aborted you. She said it without flinching, without emotion. Like she was reading off a grocery list. Then she slapped me. Hard. Hard enough that my ears rang. Hard enough that Hazel gasped and covered her mouth like she might throw up. I didn't fight back. I didn't move. I just stared at the floor as Elizabeth kept hitting me, each strike less controlled than the last. Arthur didn't stop her. He didn't comfort her. He didn't even look at Hazel crying on the stairs. He waited until she was out of breath and then said, in the calmest voice I've ever heard, "He's not worth getting this upset over." He turned to me. "You're dead weight. If you don't like the rules, leave." Hazel whispered from the staircase, "Dad, please." Elizabeth shot her a glare so sharp Hazel recoiled like she'd been slapped too. Elizabeth picked up my school bag and hurled it at me. "Get out. Come back when you can bring value to this family." Value. Not safety. Not apology. Not love. Value. It's funny how fast a person can go numb. How quickly your body decides, oh, okay, the people meant to protect us want us gone. Understood. I packed quietly. A hoodie, a few socks, my school ID. Hazel stood in the hall, eyes red. "Don't leave," she whispered. "I don't have a choice," I said. And for the first time since we were kids, she didn't tell me to try harder. She didn't tell me to be careful. She didn't tell me it would get better. She just cried. I walked downstairs with my bag. Arthur and Elizabeth didn't look up. Didn't acknowledge me. Didn't say a single word. I opened the front door. The cold punched me in the chest, but it still felt warmer than that house. Halfway down the sidewalk, something made me turn. Maybe instinct. Maybe grief. Hazel was at her bedroom window, palms pressed against the glass, tears streaming down her face. She mouthed it slowly, painfully. "Don't leave me." And I almost went back. God, I almost did. But the truth hit me just as fast. If I walked back into that house, I wasn't leaving again. Not as myself. Not alive in the ways that mattered. So I lowered my head, shoved my frozen hands into my hoodie pocket, and walked into the storm. I was 15 years old, alone, terrified, and shaking. But for the first time in my life, I was free. Freedom at 15 is a strange thing. It doesn't feel brave. It doesn't feel triumphant. It feels like frostbite creeping through your socks behind a gas station dumpster at midnight, while a police cruiser rolls by and you pray they don't ask questions. Because questions lead to shelters. Shelters lead to reports. Reports lead to home. I would have rather slept in a snowbank. That first night, the wind sliced through my hoodie like it paid rent. I curled up behind the dumpster because it blocked the worst of it, hugging my knees until my joints ached. Cars passed. People laughed inside warm restaurants. Christmas lights blinked like they were mocking me. A police officer spotted me eventually. He walked over, hands on his belt, eyes scanning my trembling fingers. "You all right, kid?" "Yeah," I lied. "Just waiting for a friend." He didn't believe me, but he didn't push. Maybe he saw enough fear in my eyes to know I wasn't running from mischief. I was running from something worse. "Don't stay out here long," he said. When he drove away, I exhaled so hard it felt like my lungs collapsed. The next morning, stiff, Starving and more numb than alive, I stumbled into a restaurant with fogged windows and the faded red sign that read Carlos Grill. Not because I had a plan. Because I smelled eggs. That was the strategic extent of my thinking. A guy in his 40s with tired eyes and a flour-dusted apron looked up. "You lost?" he asked. "No." "How old are you?" 16. Line number 70 that week. He raised an eyebrow. "You ever wash dishes?" "Yes," I lied again. He jerked his thumb toward the kitchen. "Sinks that way. Try not to break anything." Just like that, I had a job. A tiny foothold in a world that had decided to yeet me into adulthood with no warning. The kitchen was humid, noisy, chaotic. And for some messed up reason, it felt safer than my own house ever had. The steam thawed my fingers, and the clatter of pans drowned out the echo of Elizabeth's voice in my skull. I scrubbed plates until my arms shook. Around noon, Carlos slid a plate in front of me. "Eat before you pass out." I devoured it so fast he refilled my water without comment. No lecture. No guilt. Just food. "Good workers don't faint," he grumbled. That was his version of compassion. That night, when he locked up, he nodded toward a booth. "Sit until I finish counting. It's cold out." He didn't ask about my parents. Didn't ask about school. Didn't ask why a 16-year-old looked like he hadn't slept inside in days. That was why I trusted him. I didn't sleep indoors that night, but I slept warmer. Behind the grill's dumpster, still technically homeless, but with a belly full of eggs and a pocket containing a few crumpled dollars he slipped me. By accident. The next few days turned into a rhythm. Wake before sunrise. Wash dishes. Eat scraps. Disappear into whatever corner of town let me stay without questions. Repeat. Eventually, Carlos started noticing things. How I shook when I worked. How I occasionally leaned on counters like gravity had it out for me. How my hands were cracked from cold. One afternoon, when I collapsed in the kitchen and woke up staring at ceiling tiles, he was kneeling beside me with a frown. "You're burning up," he said. "When's the last time you slept?" I muttered something. He didn't believe it. He grabbed bottled water and bread, shoved them into my hands, then reached into his office drawer and pulled out a few bills. "Advance. Buy warm socks or something." I said I'd pay him back. He shrugged. "Didn't ask?" I didn't know it then, but that was the first adult in my life who helped me without demanding anything in return. Not obedience. Not grades. Not perfection. Just work hard. Stay alive. Show up. It became a strange kind of sanctuary. Not love. Not family. But the first foundation stone of the person I'd become. And while I was learning to survive, one freezing night at a time, Elizabeth and Arthur weren't searching. Weren't calling. Weren't asking neighbors. They weren't worried. They were waiting for me to crawl back. But I didn't crawl. I adapted. And the longer I stayed gone, the more something new began to take shape inside me. A spine. By the time I turned 16, for real this time, survival wasn't a crisis anymore, it was a routine. A messed up, patchwork, duct-taped routine, but a routine nonetheless. Carlos's grill became my unofficial base camp. I worked every shift he'd allow, sometimes more, and slept wherever the cold couldn't reach my bones. 3 years passed like that. Dish pits turned into line prep. Line prep turned into someone occasionally trusting me with a knife. Hard work didn't scare me. Being idle did. Idleness meant thinking. Thinking meant remembering. So I didn't. I moved through jobs like stepping stones, warehouse work, night shifts, retail, customer service, delivery routes. Anything that kept me afloat and didn't ask for a resume describing family background. I shared tiny apartments with strangers, lived off cheap food, and learned the fundamentals of hustle: show up early, stay late, don't complain, and speak like someone who knows what he's doing even when he doesn't. Slowly, painfully, I built a life. By 25, I'd scraped together enough experience in sales, logistics, and operations to take a risk. A wild one. A stupid one. The kind that had me sitting in a rundown office with a flickering light bulb thinking, well, if this fails, at least the dumpster behind Carlos's is still open. I started a small sales operations company. I had 2 folding chairs, a used laptop, and an industrial-strength fear of being a disappointment. Ironically, the one thing my parents ever gave me that turned out to be useful. Clients trickled in. Then more. Then enough that I wasn't constantly waiting for the universe to pull the rug out from under me. I thought the past was gone. I genuinely did. And then my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I'm not sure why I answered. Some mix of instinct and boredom. A soft voice whispered, "Xavier?" I forgot how to breathe for a second. "Hazel?" 12 years vanished in a heartbeat. Suddenly I was 15 again, snow in my shoes, her face at the window. "Where are you?" I asked. "In town," she whispered. I need to see you. Please." She still talked like someone who spent her life making herself smaller. We met behind Carlos's grill after closing. I got there early and paced, half expecting a ghost, half expecting Arthur to jump out from behind a dumpster with a lecture about wasted potential. But it was her. Hazel. 28. Thinner than she should have been. Tense, like her bones were bracing for impact. Her coat was buttoned up to her chin. Dark circles framed her eyes, deep ones, the kind that don't come from studying but from living in a cage. She stopped when she saw me. "It's really you." Her voice cracked on you. "It's really you," I said back. We stood there with 12 years of unsaid things hanging between us like smoke. "You look good," she said. "You look tired," I replied gently. She let out a shaky laugh. "You have no idea." But I did. I knew that haunted posture, that apologetic way of taking up space. I'd worn it like a second skin. She hugged herself tighter. "I can't stay long. They think I'm studying at a friend's house." "You're still living with them?" I asked. She nodded. "They said moving out would ruin my focus." Of course they did. Independence was only acceptable if it made them look good. She continued, "They think about you. A lot. They say you abandoned the family. They tell relatives you're going through a rebellious phase." I laughed once, sharp. "A 12-year-long phase?" Hazel's expression changed, fear then urgency. "They found out about your company. A neighbor recognized your name. They think your success proves their methods worked. They're planning to reach out." Of course they were. Nothing thrilled them like taking credit for something they never touched. Hazel swallowed hard. "I'm scared for you. They're not coming to reconnect. They're coming to claim you." My stomach tightened, not from fear, but from recognition. This was classic Arthur and Elizabeth. The same people who would rather lose a son than lose face. There was a long silence before she added, almost as a confession, "I wish I were strong enough to leave like you did." "You're not weak, Hazel," I said. I reached into my pocket, and she pulled out a folded note. "I wrote this the night you left," she whispered. I don't know why I kept it. When she slipped it into my hand, she looked suddenly like that 15-year-old in the window again. "I should go," she said. "If they notice, it'll be bad." "Hazel. I'm glad you made it out," she said. "Even if I didn't." Then she disappeared into the night like a shadow retreating to its owner. Hours later, sitting in my drafty office, I finally unfolded the note. "I'm sorry. I wish I could go with you." 12 years later, she was still trapped. 12 years later, they still owned her. 12 years later, they were coming for me. And this time? I wasn't a boy they could break. If there's one thing you learn from growing up with people like Arthur and Elizabeth, it's this: silence is never peace. It's strategy. It's the pause before the next offensive. So when Hazel warned me they were coming, I believed her. But I underestimated just how fast they'd move. The first message arrived at 11:43 p.m., right as I was wrapping up billing for the week. I glanced at my phone, saw the name, and genuinely thought it was spam. Elizabeth Morgan. "We miss you." We hope you're well. Your father and I are proud of how you turned out. Proud. That was the first red flag. Pride from my mother was as unnatural as seeing a raccoon ride a bicycle. The next morning. Family is important. Let's reconnect. It's time to come home. Delete. 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 Then the mask slipped. You owe us a conversation. After everything we sacrificed, this is how you thank us? Hazel is worried about you. So I texted Hazel. Did you say that? No. They're using my name again. Of course they were. Then Arthur joined the parade of delusion. He followed my business accounts. Liked old posts. Commented publicly like he was my proud father cheering from the sidelines of my little league career instead of the man who once removed my bedroom door to correct disobedience. My employees noticed. Some lady commented on your LinkedIn photo, one said. She called you a handsome son. I didn't know you were into posting family pictures. I wasn't. Ever. But things didn't get truly unhinged until 2 days later when my receptionist knocked on my office door. There's someone here to see you, she said. An older man. Says he's your father. My body didn't react the way I expected. No panic. No shaking. Just an immediate and overwhelming wave of annoyance, like someone had parked in my reserved spot. He came back the next morning. This time, I saw him walk through the lobby, chin up, back stiff, that familiar expression like he was inspecting a crime scene he expected me to be guilty of. He marched straight toward me. Xavier, he said. Like a command. I didn't stand. Didn't greet him. Didn't soften. This is a private workplace, I said. You need an appointment. He gave a tight smile. Your mother and I have been worried. I stared. No, you haven't. You've been offended. His smile twitched. We sacrificed everything for you. This business exists because of the discipline we gave you. That's when I closed the folder in my hands and looked him dead in the eyes. You didn't teach me discipline. You taught me survival. That landed hard. He wasn't expecting resistance, let alone a fully grown man who no longer shook when he spoke. Your mother is sick over this, he tried. She should see a doctor. His jaw clenched. You still have that disrespectful tone. No. I said. I have boundaries now. He took a step closer, clearly forgetting I wasn't 15 anymore. I stood up. Slowly. Deliberately. Arthur stopped mid-sentence. For the first time in my life, he looked small. Or maybe I just wasn't small anymore. You are done barging into my life, I said. Leave. He tried, glaring. It bounced right off me. After a long moment, he turned and walked out without a word. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. That night Elizabeth called. Not texted. Not emailed. An actual phone call, like she was summoning me to confession. The moment I answered, she launched in. How dare you speak to your father like that? Like what? With disrespect. He disrespected my boundaries. You humiliated him. Good. There was a beat of shocked silence. Then she switched tactics. Elizabeth was always a multi-tool of manipulation. We want our family back. We want to celebrate how successful you are now. Her voice cracked into a fragile sob, the kind she used when her students misbehaved. Doesn't this prove our methods worked? No, I said. It proves I escaped. Her breath hitched like I'd slapped her. You abandoned us, she said. Do you know what that did to Hazel? Do you know what you did to me? You ungrateful. I hung up. 5 minutes later, Hazel texted. Don't talk to them. They're spiraling. They think they can force you to come back. Force? I replied. They're planning something. A big family dinner. They already told relatives you're returning home for a reconciliation. Reconciliation. What a polished word for photo ops and emotional extortion. I messaged her back. I'm not going anywhere near that house. That should have ended it. But Arthur and Elizabeth had never handled rejection well. Over the next week. Emails. Voicemails. Hand-delivered letters. A visit where they tried waiting outside my office like disappointed PTA members. So I did what I'd always been too afraid to do. I told them to meet me. Public place. Neutral territory. No audience they controlled. A cafe downtown. Hazel texted me one last warning. Please be careful. They want a story, not you. I read it twice. But I still went. Cafes at mid-morning have a strange kind of peace, the kind that feels borrowed, not owned. Clinking cups, low chatter, sunlight catching on tabletops. A place where normal people meet for normal reasons. Which made it the perfect place for me to finally end something that had never actually begun. Arthur and Elizabeth were already there when I arrived, seated at a two-top near the window like they were posing for a magazine spread titled Parents Who Think They Did Nothing Wrong. Elizabeth wore a polite, brittle smile. Arthur had his hands folded with the same severity he used at dental consultations. They looked small. Not physically, just stripped of the stage where they'd always performed best. No hallway. No dining room. No authority to stand on. I didn't sit. This is the last time we're doing this, I said. Elizabeth immediately reached for my hand across the table, performing maternal concern like she was auditioning for a role where someone actually loved their child. We just want our son back. You don't have one, I said. Not anymore. Her hand froze. Arthur's eyes narrowed. Watch your tone, he snapped. No, I said. You don't get to tell me that. Not here. Not ever again. For a moment, an honest, unfiltered moment, they both looked stunned. Like someone had changed the script without warning them. Elizabeth tried regrouping first. She always did. We understand you're angry, she said softly. We made mistakes. But you're successful now. You turned out so well. Doesn't that mean our methods worked? There it was. The thesis they'd been building toward. The story they wanted to sell to relatives, neighbors, church friends, colleagues. They had forged a troubled son into a thriving adult through tough love, unwavering standards, and necessary discipline. I leaned forward slightly. You don't miss me, I said. You miss the idea of me. The version of me that makes you look good. Arthur's jaw twitched. We did our best, he said. Your best almost killed me. Elizabeth went pale. I never. You did, I said. Both of you. They stared, speechless. Then I said the thing I had never dared to say as a child. You were bad parents. The cafe noise hummed behind us. A couple laughed in the corner. A barista steamed milk. And my parents, these two people who had shaped my entire childhood, looked at me like I was speaking in a language they'd never heard before. Arthur recovered first, his face tightening like an overwound clock. You owe this family something, he said. We invested in you. You are part of our legacy. I shook my head. I owe you nothing. Not my time. Not my money. Not my success. Not my story. Elizabeth's voice cracked. You're being cruel. No. I stood up. I'm free. Their faces, God. I'll remember them forever. Not because of guilt or satisfaction, but because it was the first time they saw me not as an extension of themselves, but as someone who had stepped out of their shadow. I didn't wait for a reply. I walked out. Calm. Steady. Whole. That night Hazel texted me. Did it go okay? I told her the truth. I said what I needed to say. After a pause, she responded. I'm proud of you. Her saying that, it landed in a place inside me that had never fully grown. For the next 2 years, silence finally meant silence, not strategy. No messages. No ambushes. No letters. Hazel and I spoke quietly, privately. She was nearing the end of medical school, still living with them, still suffocating under expectations she never agreed to. And then, one evening, months after the cafe confrontation, she called me with a voice I barely recognized, steady, resolute, almost fearless. I'm moving out, she said. I'm done. I want my life. When she asked if I'd help her pack, I didn't hesitate. That weekend, we loaded her things into a van while she stared at our childhood house like it was a museum exhibit she finally realized she'd never belonged in. You got out, she told me. You kept going. That made it easier to believe I could, too. As if on cue, Carlos showed up, still in his flour-dusted apron, holding takeout containers. Starting fresh is easier on a full stomach, he said. Hazel laughed, a real laugh, not the trembling one she grew up with. We brought her to her new place. It was small, messy, imperfect. But it was hers. And for the first time in her life, she breathed without shrinking. By the time Christmas rolled around, Arthur and Elizabeth had rewritten the narrative for relatives. Both kids independent now. We always encouraged them to spread their wings. We're so proud. Their lies no longer touched our truth. On New Year's Eve, Hazel handed me a small silver star ornament. It doesn't have to mean anything bad anymore, she said. I placed it on a shelf in my office beside my first business invoice, the spare key to Carlos's restaurant, and now her star. 3 anchors of the life I built myself. For the first time in 30 years, the future didn't feel like something to escape. It felt like something I was finally allowed to walk toward. The first few months after Hazel moved out felt like some strange, delicate experiment in freedom, one where either of us fully trusted the beaker not to explode. She'd call me at night just to sit in silence on the line, like background breathing was something she'd never been allowed to have. Sometimes she'd say things like, "I don't know what music I actually like," or, "I never realized grocery stores aren't supposed to be terrifying," or, "I don't know who I am without expectations." And I'd listen, because no one ever listened to her growing up. They listened at her, not to her. She wasn't healing yet. She was thawing. One night, about 2 months after she'd moved, I stopped by her apartment with takeout from Carlos's place. She didn't answer at first. When she finally cracked the door open, her eyes were swollen, hair messy, hoodie inside out. "Rough night?" I asked gently. She stepped aside and let me in without a word. Papers were scattered across the floor, medical school assignments, textbooks open and marked with desperate notes, outlines, flashcards half-written then abandoned. "I couldn't concentrate," she said. I kept hearing Mom's voice. Every time I paused to think, I heard her saying, "Hazel, you're slipping again." I sat on the couch and nodded toward the food. "Eat first. Panic later." She laughed, a shaky, tear-warped sound, but she sat beside me and slowly unpacked a container of pasta. Her hands were trembling. "You know what the weirdest part of all this is?" she asked, staring at the food like it might judge her. "I keep expecting them to walk through the door. Like they installed cameras and they're watching to make sure I'm studying properly." "That's not weird," I said. "That's conditioning." She nodded, swallowing hard. "I used to think trauma was a big event. A fire. A crash. Something dramatic. But mine was just daily. Constant. White noise. That's still trauma," I said quietly. "It's just the slow kind." She kept eating. I kept her company. No advice, no fixing. Just presence. Something neither of us had growing up. Around midnight, she leaned her head on my shoulder. "I didn't think I'd make it out," she whispered. "But you walked away at 15. And you built something. And I kept that in my head all these years. I'd think, if Xavier made it, maybe I can too. Maybe." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "You did make it," I said. "You're out." "Not fully," she said. "Not yet. But I'm trying." She fell asleep for the first time in days, real sleep, the kind that doesn't come with adrenaline. And in that quiet apartment, listening to her breathing, I realized something I hadn't let myself think. We weren't done with Arthur and Elizabeth. Distance didn't break their grip. Silence didn't erase their shadows. They had shaped us too deeply to simply fade away. And there was something else. Something Hazel didn't know yet. A message I hadn't told her about. One that came 3 days after the cafe confrontation. One I ignored at the time because I thought it meant nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was a warning I hadn't recognized. And it was about to matter in ways neither of us were prepared for. Hazel didn't hear about the message until months later. I didn't think it mattered anymore. But standing in her apartment one evening, lights low, her textbooks stacked neatly for once, I realized she deserved to know how it truly ended. It came 3 days after the cafe, I told her. From Elizabeth's phone. Hazel's face tensed. What did it say? I handed her my old backup phone. One message was still saved. If you walk away from us, you are no longer family. Hazel read it twice, jaw tightening. They meant it. I know. She set the phone down gently, like touching it too hard might reopen a wound. They didn't just lose a son. She murmured. They threw him away. And they did it again with you. I said. She looked at me, really looked, and something final clicked behind her eyes. Not anger. Not grief. Closure. The kind you earn, not receive. I thought leaving them meant starting from zero, she said. But it didn't. It meant starting from freedom. We stood there in the quiet, a pair of people shaped by the same storm, finally out of it. A week later, Hazel texted me a photo, the old Morgan house, lights off, curtains drawn. A for sale sign hammered into the frozen lawn. They were leaving town. Running from a narrative they could no longer control. We didn't celebrate. We didn't gloat. We just exhaled. On Christmas Eve, our own, unofficial one, Hazel came over. Carlos joined us, still wearing his flour-dusted apron. We ate simple food at my kitchen table. No decorations. No forced poses. No staged perfection. At one point Hazel reached into her coat and pulled out that same silver star. Let's give it a new meaning, she said. We hung it on a shelf beside my first invoice and the spare key to Carlos's restaurant. 3 symbols of the life we built on our terms. Hazel touched the star lightly. We're free, she whispered. And for the first time in either of our lives, it wasn't a hope. It was the truth.